Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this episode, let's talk about crankbaits for wintertime fishing. So anywhere from late November all the way through February, I'm going to show you the crankbaits that I like to use. And as you guys know, if you've watched my videos a lot in the past, you know that I like to keep things simple, so I don't like overcomplicate things with a bunch of different crankbaits because there's so many different options out there. And I'm sure that there are crankbaits that are just absolute killers during this time of year that I haven't even tried, but that's because I've got a bunch of full boxes with crankbaits that just tend to work for me, and I have a lot of confidence in them, which I think is really important. So we're going to be talking about both lipless and lip design crankbaits that I like to use this time of year. And first off, let's talk about kind of like what I want to see out of a crankbait for wintertime fishing. First off, we need to kind of distinguish what type of forage species we're trying to imitate, because it kind of transitions from, early winter or like late fall into wintertime, like solid wintertime. Because in the very beginning, and we've talked about this a lot in recent videos, in the very beginning of the, the kind of the wintertime patterns, fish are more focused on shad type bait fish. The shad is very plentiful this time of year. They made the transition from the backs of the creeks during the fall transition, and now they're kind of like just meandering around some areas, and they're in great quantities. And shad are a great food source for bass to really stock up for the wintertime and prepare for the coldest water temperatures. So I'll have a bunch of different shad, imitating baits, and a lot of times that means a lipless crankbait. And so I'll cater to those fish that earlier in wintertime, they're really focused on shad. But as things stabilize into winter, the seasonal patterns that you would expect in winter, the fish start transitioning from just focusing on shad, like by and large, to a lot of them start to really look for crawfish this time of year. So I will have a bunch of different boxes with baits that have more crawfish patterns. But like right now, first week of December, this is a really good time to still focus on shad type patterns and imitate those bait fish. And that's why like right now is a great time when the fish are obviously still working on those giant schools of shad, especially if they're on flats, you get a sunny day, to throw a lipless crankbait. Let's find a good one. Here's a good one right here. Throwing a lipless crankbait up shallow can be very, very good. Usually if it's sunny, I'll try something that has a little bit more shine to it. And then on cloudier days, I'll do something that's a little bit more, opaque in color. So like whites or pearls or something like that. Let's get one out of here. Of course, all of my box is just tangled up, but you could see, similar color pattern, but this one doesn't have the sheen or the shininess to it that this one does. Both of them can be very good. You just have to change the colors based on the prevailing light penetration. That's kind of like how I approach the color choices. But so this time of year, I feel like I'm really still focused on shad patterns. I think that's really important. But there comes a time kind of like mid-December where, you want to, no matter what type of crankbait you're throwing, you want to kind of transition over to crawfish, and down here in the South, reds mixed with browns and greens are going to pretty much be the key colors for this time of year. So anyways, sometimes it's a very drastic change. Like all of a sudden within a week, the fish will go from wanting shad patterns to crawfish patterns. And sometimes, it just, the lines get blurred and they want both for a extended period of time. So Some of the crankbaits that I like, you know, lipless crankbaits are one that I really do have a little bit more of a diverse selection. I've got a lot of 6 Cents, I've got a lot of Strike Kings, got a lot of Booyahs. You know, those are the type of, and of course the original Bill Lewis rattle trap. All of those I'm going to be using, and I tend to just kind of mix between them because every single one of them has a slightly different action and sound. And so I'll mix between them and just try a bunch of different, you know, sizes, colors, and designs. And so, like, as far as lipless crankbaits, you know, I just mentioned the brands that I like. Lipless crankbaits, you know, I think that there's a lot of different good ones on the market. And it's a category that I really like to experiment on the spot. So I don't have like one that I like to throw all the time. But I will say that some of my absolute favorites, that if I'm gonna reach for something, and sorry if we got some noise in the background, it's probably gonna be something like this. You got the Booyah, and then you've got the Red Eye Shad from Strike King. Those are two ones that I'm definitely gonna be using on a regular basis. And same thing with the shad pattern lipless crankbaits. Those are, you know, pretty much the same set of brands that I'm going to be using. So let's talk about some of the lip baits, because these are the ones that I get a little bit more specific and I don't like have as broad of a selection as some of the other ones. When it starts getting cold, I really like a crankbait that has a tight wobble to it, a tight action to it. And that's why it's really hard to get away from this one right here. This bait right here is probably the best cold water crankbait that there is. This is the DT6. It runs around, you know, 5 to 8 feet, depending on what type of line that you're using and the tackle that you're using. And this bait right here has the perfect little, you know, shake to it, little wobble that's nice and tight. It's not super buoyant, so it doesn't rise really fast when you pause it. It actually, some of them, depending on the bait itself, because they are made of wood, so they do have different, you know, every single crankbait is going to be a little bit different as far as buoyancy and things like that. But for the most part, most of these just kind of have a slow rise to them, and some of them, you know, are almost suspending. You know, I have some of these that they don't rise very fast at all, which does mean that you're going to snag more, and it's going to be harder to you know, get your bait free from like a rock or something. But in general, it's really advantageous for this time of year in the colder water. You don't want a bait that rises really fast, in my opinion. You can still catch them on a fast rising crankbait, but it's probably not going to be quite as good. But the DT6 has got to be number one. Some of my favorite colors, you know, when they start focusing on crawfish, you know, red is a really good one. This one's the demon color. This one's actually kind of faded, which is nice. This one is one of my favorites for like right as the crawfish are starting to change to that red color. I like this one right here. Got that nice green back, the red belly on it. This is a really good color for December. Out on Chick, I've caught a lot of fish with that color. And primarily I'm fishing rocky areas with these crankbaits. I'm really not gonna be fishing it around grass and get snagged all the time. These are not crankbaits that do well in the grass, in my opinion. Now, if you're fishing around like eelgrass or something like that, it's a little bit different. I know people that throw a DT6 around eelgrass and do really well. But by and large, when I'm fishing these crankbaits around is primarily rock. You know, there are times where I'm going to throw the shad pattern, and that's like right now, early December. I would like to throw a shad pattern like this one, but generally the DT6 is still going to be one of my go-tos, regardless if I'm imitating shad or crawfish. Some other baits that I really, really like this time of year when it's cold is this one right here. This is actually one of my absolute new favorites in the last, 10 years, is a rock crawler. A rock crawler, this is a killer crankbait. This is one of my favorite clear water crankbaits because of the crazy hunting action this has. It's really good for fishing around, like 45-degree banks with lots of rock, just covering water with this thing. But really, for me, the number one condition that I like to see before I start throwing the rock crawler is clear water. So like going up and fishing like a lake like Holston, South Holston for smallmouth and stuff like that this time of year, really, really good bait for that situation. And the reason why I like this in the clear water is because that hunting action really appeals to the visual senses that bass are using in clear water situations. But with the DT6, I'll use that even in fairly dirty water, because, you know, I feel like it's more of a vibration thing with the DT6. It has flatter sides on it, so it tends to push water, you know, a little bit more. I feel like the rock crawler has a more hydrodynamic profile, so even though it has a wider wobble, it doesn't tend to push the water as much. So I think that this gives the DT6 actually works a little bit better in slightly dirtier water. However, that may just be my personal opinion, because the rock crawler can catch fish in dirtier water too. But another reason I like the rock crawler in clear water is because they have some pretty killer patterns that work really well. Now, the other one that we've got to talk about is the pretty much what the rock crawler was designed after, which is the wiggle wart. So I've got both the old pre-Rapala wiggle warts and newer ones, and these work excellent. It's pretty much the same deal as the rock crawler. However, I like the wiggle wart in a little bit dirtier water. So if I still want the same hunting action as the rock crawler, but I'm going to be using it in dirtier water, I like the wiggle wart because it has a little bit more rattle to it, and I think it just works better. And I think the paint jobs on the wiggle wart kind of match what I like to see for dirtier water. A little bit more opaque, less refined clear water colors. They do have some really good clear water colors, but I think the rock crawler just has some pretty awesome color patterns. So those are the ones that I really like to throw this time of year. I really don't venture out with different crankbaits that much. I will say this, the Fritz sides have started to gain my trust a little bit. And I also think that there's something to be said about this little Badger, these Badger line of crankbaits. I think that these actually could be really good because they do mirror a lot of the characteristics as far as how they work of the wiggle warts. So anyways, guys, one key thing I want to mention about wintertime fishing with crankbaits is you want to make sure that your hooks are extremely sharp. I know that I talk about that all year round, but during the wintertime, the fish's mouths just tend to be a little bit tougher. So you want to make sure that you have extremely sharp hooks. I change out all of my hooks with the TBL 930 from Hayabusa. These are great, just super, super sharp little hook points on there. So that's really important, especially since you're grinding on rock. You want to change them out often. As far as tackle that I'm going to be using, usually I'm just using 10 or 12 pound test fluorocarbon. I really like Invisex from Seaguar this time of year. And the reason for that is it's a soft, supple formula for fluorocarbon. And I feel like it doesn't get as rigid in the cold water like some other fluorocarbons do. So I really like to maintain, that softer structure with using the Invisex versus other fluorocarbons. Now, there's nothing wrong with throwing Tatsu or something like that, because that also has a really good softness to it that I don't think gets real rigid during the wintertime. But you can't go wrong with either of those. So 10, 12 pound test, unless you're using the lipless crankbaits, those you can go up to like 17 or 20 pound test if you're fishing shallow and fishing around grass and stuff like that. And as far as the rods that I'm going to be using, on the Lipless crankbaits, I'm usually using a 7.3 medium heavy Versa series rod. With all these other crankbaits, I like a 7-foot medium action Versa series. That seems to be just the perfect rod for these different lipped crankbaits. And really, the only difference between the two as far as the reels go, I'm going to be using either a VLD10 or a FX8 reel from Fitzgerald. And I like to use the 7.2 to 1 gear ratio for the lipless crankbaits, but I like to use a 6.6 for the lipped crankbaits. That's the difference. I like to have a little bit slower gear ratio for the lipped crankbaits. But other than that, if you guys have any questions at all about this topic, please drop a comment below. Check out the affiliate links for links to any of the products that I talked about that are available at 44tackle.com. Other than that, I hope you guys are having a great day. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. I'm going to see you out on the water. Trust the process.